I'm about 9 years old at the time. I'm sleeping over at my best friend's house down in his basement. At some point in the middle of the night, I wake up to the sound of someone running down the stairs to the basement. I shoot straight up off the couch we were sleeping on. My friend somehow remains asleep. When I look over to the stairs, I see a kid standing at the bottom. I had just woken up, so I'm wiping my eyes, making sure my eyes aren't playing tricks on me. He's still there, so I ask, "Who's there?" I get no response, and now I'm horrified. He's just standing there at the bottom of the stairs. So I think it may be my best friend's brother messing with us, but they look smaller, and I'm not so sure I'm still very wary. After not receiving an answer, I ask angrily, "What do you want?" The little boy had stopped at the bottom of the stairs and not moved an inch. He looks me right in the eyes and says, "I'm here. I'm here. I'm ready to give it my all." Very weird thing to say, I know. After hearing his voice and processing his weird response, I'm now 100% sure that this is not my friend's brother. And my friend's still sleeping on the other end of the couch. After he said what he said, it really clicked in my 9-year-old head that this isn't a dream, and I'm actually awake right now. My heart drops, and I'm frozen with terror. I don't know what else to say to the kid at the bottom of the stairs, but I continue to look at him despite being absolutely frozen with fear. He stares right back at me, and after about 10 or 15 seconds, I ask him who he was again. He starts to give me a real sinister grin, and then he legitimately fades away right in front of my eyes. I lay back down under the covers and come to qualms with the fact that I'm awake. After about an hour of shitting my pants under the covers, I build up the courage to wake my friend up to go upstairs. I tell my friend and his family about it the next morning, and everyone tries to convince me that I was sleeping, but I know I was awake. A few years later, after they had moved out of that house, my friend's mom admits to having a few strange encounters in that house herself. I wish the kid had said a bit more, but at the same time, I guess I don't. Because that grin that he gave me after the fear came over me has stuck with me ever since. Now at 23, I still get chills when I think about that experience. If he had paired that grin with something a little more frightening than I'm here, I'm ready to give it my all, I probably would have had to be institutionalized. I'm currently a senior in high school, and my friend and I always meet in the library during breaks. Since we aren't allowed our bags in there, I can easily check if her bag is in the foyer. This friend also recently dyed her hair from light to dark brown. This will be important later. So a few days ago, I was running late to break after talking to my teacher and went to meet her in the library. But her bag wasn't there, and she wasn't in the library at all. I started to head towards her last class, wondering if she kept in too, and I ran into her in the doorway to a hallway in the school. At first I didn't notice her, but her hair was back to light brown. I greeted her and asked her how her science class was, as she had had last period. Now for context, my friend hates school in general, and usually replies to any question I ask about her classes with yes. But this time she said, "Great, how was bio?" This is very unlike her, and I think that's when I got a feeling of something being wrong. I kind of just gave my usual reply to her and asked her what she did in science, to which she responded with yes. As usual, but also said that they were doing something interesting. We carried on through the hallway until we reached a door that led to a small deck and some stairs. I could sense her behind me as I walked outside, but when I heard a door shut, I turned around to find nothing. I wondered if she hadn't wanted to go outside in the rain, so went back inside to look for her, but I couldn't find her anywhere. Now, it's important to mention that my friend is very quiet and timid. I'm the only one she really talks to, and even some of the teachers don't know her name. And so I asked someone in the hallway, "Hey, did Lucy come through here?" Not her actual name. And they responded immediately with, "Who the hell is Lucy? I thought that was your name." I shortened my name when I went to high school, and it just so happens to be the same as her first name. And that made me panic, thinking that the Mandela effect may have taken her. But when I searched my phone for photos of her, I was so relieved to find quite a few, especially ones of us together. I went to the library to check again, and her bag was there this time. The librarian teased me about the fact that I'm never late, and that Lucy has been here since break started, waiting for me. I said to her, "No, Lucy wasn't here when I came earlier." And the librarian shrugged and said, "She definitely was. I didn't see you, though," and walked away. I found Lucy sitting near a couple of my friends who were starting to get worried about me, and I asked Lucy if she'd been there. She denied it, and my other friends backed her up. Immediately after it happened, my memory of it was covered in a haze, almost as if I was dreaming. I've always been able to feel spirits. I can feel presences of my papa and cousin who died, watching over and protecting the rest of my family and me, and occasionally get visions, but I've never experienced anything like this. Did I somehow step into another world? Or what happened there? I live in Hawaii on an island called Maui, specifically in the city of Kahulu, which is in the middle of the island. Anyway, there is a place called Hana which doesn't have as much buildings as Kahulu. It's much more natural and had plenty of trees, which makes it an excellent place to camp. My cousin, aunt and uncle from Minnesota wanted to camp there in cabins that you can rent. The night before we left, I slept next to my dad outside one of the two cabins that we rented. In the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Very clear footsteps. They were coming from the other cabin, so I looked over there, and there was what looked like a tall Hawaiian man stepping into the cabin. It looked like he was holding a weapon called a leo mano, a wreath of shark teeth. I got up and rushed to the house. I was terrified, but didn't want my aunt guys to get hurt. I ran up the stairs and walked into the house. Surprisingly, everyone was still sleeping and there was no man in the house. So I walked out back to my cot and the footsteps started again, except it sounded like there were 10 or more people walking in the cabin and on the grass. I knew it was night marchers. Everything added up. I knew they wouldn't pay attention to me if I didn't stand in their way. I tried not to think of it that much, and I fell asleep in the next 30 minutes. When I woke up, I didn't say anything about it. My dad would have thought I was going crazy. But what creeped me out the most was that my uncle, who is Hawaiian, heard the same sound and described it the same way I heard it. For many years, I have been a scholar of philosophy, metaphysics, astrophysics, and cosmology. Over my career, I began to find interest in the paranormal, astral field, demonology, world religions, and other unexplained phenomena. I found interest in these areas because I had my fair share of unexplained supernatural experiences. I rigorously only searched for authentic material through my research, and I spent a couple of years doing that. From haunted locations to supposed demonic encounters, I never actually got anything truthful. It always ended up as fake. Eventually, I called up a colleague who was an assistant to an archaeologist, and he nicely provided me with legitimate pictures of ancient scriptures, texts, monuments, artifacts, etc., taken from actual places of discovery. One of the places that really caught my attention was a clay mask that dates back to the Babylonian area in Mesopotamia. A grey figure human-like mask with a frown is depicted. Best I can describe it as, I don't want to look at it again. which I will explain later on. After a while of digging and researching some more, I set all paranormal, demonology, etc. studies aside because I was working long shifts at work and didn't have time for anything. So I gave it a break. A few nights pass and I start having these incredibly detailed dreams. My dreams began softly, simple but extremely detailed. For this reason, I still remember my first one. Even though it's been a year now since I dreamt of it, I saw myself walking through a field. I was able to feel the grass touch my toes. I only had a shirt and jeans on, no watch or necklace which I typically wear. The environment was nothing insidious. A prairie field with yellowish green grass and orange looking clouds due to the sunset. Even though I was alone, I felt comfort. Amazing comfort, as if all my dopamine stores were being released. I then woke up from my dream and proceeded with my day. As a joke, I told my buddy at work what I dreamed about. He told me it was nothing but the brain's way of coping with stressful moments. The guy's a scientist and doesn't believe in astral or general superstitions. So I brushed it off and proceeded with my work. I get home and I'm so tired. I don't want to do anything but sleep. Before I fall asleep, I hear a faint developing ring in my right ear. I fall asleep. I start dreaming. The first thing I see is a volcanic-looking surface. No fire nor heat. A cold, dark place enough for the eye to see. This time I'm wearing a dark red robe. I was naked underneath. But I was more confused about the place I was in. Suddenly, I started hearing screams. These screams were so expressive, so unnatural, as if someone was being tortured nerve by nerve. It was coming from an abyss. I was aware I was dreaming, and I really wanted to wake up. Even though I was aware, I had no control over the dream, no power over it. I then felt something push me, and I fell into the abyss. As I fell through the abyss, I kept hearing more and more screams. At that moment, the abyss was no longer dark, but visible enough for me to see. To my horror, I saw these deformed animals with wings and infant human heads hovering over me as I fell. I then landed on the ground, and I felt the force of the impact. It hurt insanely bad to point of actual death, but for some reason, I was still alive, and my pain was slowly fading away. I got up, and in that very second, I realized where I was. I saw hundreds of people, if not millions, being tortured with knives, maces, swords, poisons, crucifixions. I really can't express how many torture devices I saw in that dream. The environment was slight, foggy, and maintained that volcanic appearance I mentioned earlier. It was so cold, and it smelled like rotting pig intestines. I began to walk slowly, and I kept seeing these animal human beings torturing others. They're demons. One of them had 2 heads. One of a rooster and a snake and the body of a bear. They began chasing a man wearing Roman armor and a gold leaf headband. The men saw me and hid near me. The man frighteningly began speaking to me in Latin. It was an old form of Latin, but for some strange reason, I understood him natively. He told me he was Claudius Caesar, and he wanted his statues destroyed and to pray for his insolence. And as a reward, he would tell me where I could find his gold in the natural world. I'm guessing the real world? Shortly after, the demonic rooster-looking thing snatches him and starts to remove his genitals and skins him with the rooster's beak. I was beyond terrified, but the demons did nothing to me, as if I were inside a protective wall. I also saw an Aztec warrior getting his organs removed and burned by various children who had elderly faces. Also, some old naked zombie-looking lady was using a knife to make a face mask out of a beautiful blonde woman who was tied up near a rotting tree. Who I believe was Marilyn Monroe due to the hairstyle and facial features. The demon carved out her nose and placed it into his own nasal spine while laughing. It was utterly disgusting. It was not only humans who were being tortured, but other beings as well. A human with an elephant's head was being fed to maggots, while a bird with a human body and Egyptian clothing was being repeatedly stabbed with a staff. Of course, none of this was real, but a dream. It felt so damn realistic. I started praying and wanted to wake up. I always believe in God, and I kept praying and praying. And everything went dark again. I closed and opened my eyes, and I'm no longer hell. I'm in some kind of desert. I then saw a hooded being with my dark red robe approach me. I was again wearing the same shirt and jeans, no shoes or tire. Anyways, I couldn't see his face only until he got near me. As soon as I saw his face, my heart rate went up so fast. I saw the devil. I've never in my life seen anything remotely frightening as that face. It wasn't per se its facial deformities, but more of its negative overall appearance. My heart rate was off the roof. The entity kept looking at me. His goat-like appearance had otherworldly, hard to describe, but the closest thing I found on the internet that Margie looks like him is the devil in Albert Dure's Night, Dead and the Devil, Woodcut. He whispers in my ear and sounds just like me and tells me that the world ended after Christ's salvation, that God loves his creation so much that he gives us the option to be saved or not. The devil also mentioned that humans live once again in the natural world, a world with no meaning but controlled by arbitrary, universal and cosmic forces. The true reality beings when we die, or rather resurrected. I lived with a girlfriend in a big Edwardian house in London, a former big house now split into separate flats or apartments. There were 2 bedrooms, the spare one was shockingly chilly, for no reason. You just get a chill right down your spine as soon as you walked in there. In our first week or 2 there, my girlfriend asked me why I kept turning round a picture of us the other way. Well, I wasn't, but it repeatedly happened, with no explanation. Things started to move in front of us. Small things, small items pushed off a table, or things almost being flicked. This is hard for people to believe, but it happened a number of times. And luckily, a guest once saw it too. We walked into the flat and a lipstick that was on the table flew off it at speed. She jumped and asked if we saw it. We had. The weird thing was, we didn't mind. It didn't feel evil or anything, so we just accepted it, and that was that. A few years later, different flat, different girlfriend. One day, we randomly started hearing footsteps around our bed. Now that was definitely not nice at all. It was very scary, and loud enough to really shit us both up a lot. On the 3rd night, I said, okay, let's think about this logically. It wasn't happening a few days back, but now it is. I suggested that we had inadvertently introduced something into our space. After some discussion, it came out that she'd bought a load of clothes in a second-hand shop at exactly the point it started. The next day, every single item that we'd recently had brought into the flat were disposed of, including all the second-hand clothes. That was it. It stopped immediately. I live in a house from the 1700s in a very historical European city. We had hauntings from day one we moved in, me and my husband. Nothing sinister, but a woman who had obviously died from a stroke and didn't realize she had passed on. Whenever she was close, you got insanely nauseous and dizzy, so I had to perform a cleansing and help her over the threshold. Both me and my husband are very sensitive to these kind of things, and we don't mind family or good-natured spirits from beyond to visit us, such as my great-grandmother, who was a common visitor. noticeable by some hijinks she did when she was alive as well. Or his mother. That's the cat. However, last 2 months we had no visitations at all, and it stopped after my husband saw or sensed a black dog. I at first didn't react as we had previous pets appear in the corner of my eyes, but it later dawned on me. Neither had a black dog, only black cats. Now to my concerns. This weekend, it's great-grandma's birthday and usually a weekend of more activity from her. However, nothing. However, the cat refuses to walk in certain areas of the house, and I've been increasingly seeing what I can only describe as a pitch-black wolf hand in the corner of my vision at nights. We've woken up by the cat freaking out more and more lately. Not the usual zoomies, but literally growling and arching his back at something unseen. 5 days ago, I woke up with a large bruise on my thigh, and it looks as if someone has been biting me. No wounds, just a huge mouth-shaped bruise. I'm afraid we may have gotten something into our house that doesn't belong here. This happened when I was living in my old house in Mexico. I was probably around 10 or 11. So me and my sister were watching horror videos and scary stories, and I was a very paranoid child, so I didn't want to see anymore because it wouldn't let me sleep later. That night, my mom slept in the room with us because my dad was away working. So it was me sleeping on the side next to my door. My sister was sleeping on the floor next to me. She volunteered to sleep there so my mom could sleep on the bed. I woke up so I could turn around, and when I opened my eyes, I saw a woman or girl standing where my sister slept, with dark hair, and I couldn't see her face. Something I noticed is she carried a pair of scissors. I quickly turned around to face the wall and pretended I didn't see it, or convinced myself it was just my imagination. The next morning, I woke up and told no one about it, since it was just a dream, right? Well, my sister pulled me in my mother's room later that day and said, "Don't tell Mom, but someone cut my hair last night." And she showed me a piece of her hair that had been chopped off. Naturally, I panicked and told her what I had seen at night. I hadn't made the connection then, but my sister did tell me she used to see a girl that sometimes would harm her in her dreams, and she would wake up with similar cuts. We don't live there anymore, and when we visit, I often have nightmares, but haven't experienced anything paranormal in that house when I do go. Just an interesting story. I honestly have no idea what it could have been. So this one thing that happened to me and my buddies has been bugging me for around a year now, and I'm seeking an explanation. And after reading about all these time paradoxes, it got me thinking that we might have experienced a space-time tear shutting, or a time gap being erased in a way. Basically, here's what we all remember and experienced. We were 5 guys going on a little trip to a place my buddy owns in another town as a kind of vacation. On our 3rd day there, we decided to make a barbecue. So we started working around 11 p.m, and we were finished and getting ready to eat around 2 a.m. After we finished eating, we were all sitting in a circle, sorta. We all looked at each other and got a very eerie feeling that someone was missing. And at that moment, we were all so damn sure that there were originally 6 of us, and that someone is missing right now. We tracked the whole timeline of the thing, and there never was a 6th person. But something still felt so odd, and to this day, we still discuss the weird phenomenon from that day. What I believe happened is there was originally a 6th person, but at that certain moment, we all got that feeling someone had messed with time, and this person got erased with all their memories. But it still had an effect on us. Maybe something remained that hinted towards there being a 6th person. A little weird experience here that I actually forgot about for many years. For 6th grade camp, the year was 2004, I went to a place called Palomar Mountains in California. Of course, most of my time there was fun. Lots of scary stories and activities. One night, about 3 cabins were taken outside for some scary stories by the campfire. My cabin, of course, being included in this. I was sitting next to my friend and we were towards the back of the entire group. I was really into the scary story the counselor was telling when all of a sudden my friend nudges me. She says, "Hey, something is above us." I look up above us with her when we see this big giant round plane in the sky. I say plane because once I looked at it, I could hear it make noise. The noise was that of like a jet flying over. The big round plane had a few lights underneath it and was maybe about 3 to 4 football fields across. It was pretty close to us, and by now, it was right above the trees. It was moving very, very slowly. It didn't turn, but just glided past. I looked down to see if anyone was looking. The weird thing was that when I looked down, I couldn't hear the jet noise, and I really realized only about 15 of us were looking up while everyone else was listening to the story being told by the counselor. I looked back up and I heard the jet noise again. As I'm watching the plane start to leave and be out of sight, I think, wow, we need to tell everyone and figure out what this is. Finally, as the plane leaves our sight, the jet noise cuts off and we look back towards the counselor. To this day, I have no idea why, but we didn't bring it up. There was no discussion about it. We just went back to listening to the last story, got up and went back to the cabin. I actually forgot about this for 5 years, until I was talking about UFOs with my family, and all of a sudden, this memory came back to me like a tidal wave. I was able to ask my friend if she remembers this as well, and she does. She also doesn't know why we didn't talk about it, or why she didn't remember it until I reminded her about it. My uncle joked that we must have been abducted. Sometimes I wonder if we were. I used to stay in my grandma's house a lot as a child. It was mostly normal during the day, but nighttime always had a bad vibe to it. The whole town would get a heavy feeling that wouldn't let you go. Everything in there became dead after 8 p.m. because of it. My grandma's house had the main road in front. The back had a backyard that was connected to a small forest. The forest had this bush wall you could push through. After crossing the wall, there was a place full of burned stuff. There were only 2 entrances there that I saw. I think people would take their trash there and burn it, but things never seemed different when I went there. It honestly looked haunted as fuck, and you always felt watched. But me and my siblings were dumbasses and went several times to collect random trash or toys we could sometimes find there. The last time I went there, we found a burned doll. The only recognizable thing on her face was one untouched eye. Everything else was charred beyond recognition. I obviously picked it up like a dumbass, and I can honestly say that started a chain reaction. Noises started and nighttime felt haunted. My grandparents were worried enough to have us pee inside on a bucket. The bathroom was outside by the side of the house and had no door, just a curtain. Nothing too bad happened for a while until the dream started. I usually never dream or remember them, but when I do, it's mostly nightmares. I don't remember much since it happened over 8 years ago, but a lady in a white dress with long black hair showed up in the dream, standing there, doing nothing, just looking at me. It basically looked like the Urana, and I didn't really care for it. It creeped me out, but not enough to tell anyone. After the first dream where she showed up, I saw her in real life, and that terrified me out of my mind. My grandma owns a restaurant that's by the road, and the back has about 30 feet before it turns into a jungle, full of really tall grass. Before the grass, there's this metal fence that fell over and rusted. No way to walk there unless you wanted to get stabbed by a piece of it. The restaurant has a back door with a clear view to it, and it's only 30 to 40 feet away from the fence. I was playing by the door when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something move. I turned around to see and saw the same lady with her head down walking to the fallen fence. A calm, slow stroll as she crossed by. I knew what the Urana was and that she went for the kids, so I didn't dare make a sound. Not that I could, since I was terrified and frozen still. After she walked out of view, I went straight to my grandma's room and told her. I don't think she fully believed me, but she still hugged me and didn't go away till I fell asleep. The next time I saw my sister, I told her what happened, and she said she had a dream of the same lady. She was standing by a tree, staring right at her. Years later, I asked her about it again, and she said it felt like an out-of-body experience. In that house, my sister started having problems with sleepwalking. Now, I don't know if it was the same night the dream happened, but my grandma told me she found my sister sleepwalking and trying to open the door to the street. My sister was really creeped out when we told her and fully believes she was almost kidnapped by the spirit. Everything calmed down for a while, and about a year later, I was living with my mom again. A small 2-floor house with 2 bedrooms, one for my parents and one for me and my siblings. That house had a lot of paranormal things happen. I started to wake up around 2 to 4 a.m. to random noises or heavy feelings in my chest. Steps would sound all over the first floor. Sometimes it would sound like marbles were falling down the stairs, dishes clashing in the sink. Like I said before, I would always wake during the night. The worst thing I woke up to was my sister getting slowly dragged from the bed. We share a bed. I tried calling my mom, but I couldn't speak. I just hugged my sister close and closed my eyes tightly. It stopped after a while, and I checked on my brothers the minute I could move again. After that night, I would always interlock my feet with my sisters and check on my brothers when I woke up during the night. Thankfully, it never happened again. During that time, I would sometimes go to my abu's house. It was kind of old, but mostly normal. There was a door in the kitchen that led to the backyard. On the back was a well we sometimes used, but remained closed most of the time. And on the side was a sink we used to wash clothes. During the night, you would hear water running and the sink being used. This one time, I went to check if it was my abu, but she was passed out on the couch. Didn't make it past the kitchen and went back to bed. That was the worst thing to happen there. When we moved to the US, we rented a small house. Single floor with 4 rooms. This house had the most activity. Steps all over the house, especially the hallway. The sound of chairs moving, dishes clanking in the sink, sometimes faraway voices. I had an insane amount of sleep paralysis there and even had another dream with a lady. The first time I had sleep paralysis, this thing was standing over the door, hanging from the ceiling and looking at me. I could only close my eyes. It got closer the more sleep paralysis happened, till I was right beside my head looking over me. After a while, everything stopped. No more waking up in the middle of the night, no sounds, no steps. Like nothing had happened. It was really weird. Like a switch had flipped or something. Years later, my sister, my abu and I were walking, talking about the paranormal stuff that happened to us. She admitted to seeing the same lady before, in person when she was younger and hiding around some clothes hanging outside, and the other when hiding behind a bathroom. She said she heard the same noise as we did, and thinking it was us, went to scold us for making so much noise at night, only to see no one. I told my grandma about it, and she said she has seen and heard her too when going to the bathroom in the house we used to stay at, and said that's why she had us pee inside at night. Knowing they went to similar stuff was terrifying, and it made me think it was following my family for some reason. I still believe it in some way. We moved when I was 15, and everything calmed down since house creaks are the worst that happens. Hi, my name is Camille. I'm from France, and my house is haunted. I live in my house for nearly 8 years, and passing years, I've been watched constantly, and not by a human. That happened every single time. My desk was on the opposite side of my door frame and window, and every time when I'm on my PC, I needed to watch my door frame behind me or window to see if someone was watching. And on a day, I would watch 5 times if someone was watching me, because I knew someone was watching me. Passing years, I told my mom about it. My parents and family in general don't believe in the paranormal, so I was basically alone about this situation and feelings, but I knew I had to talk to her someday because the situation was just driving me insane for 3 years. I think my mom was scared for my mental health when I told her. Just consider having a child that told you, "Hey mom, I'm being watched by something that I don't see. Can you help me?" She didn't believe me, obviously. I kinda don't move for years and years. I was watched, and when I would turn my eyes to see if someone watched me from my windows, I would see sometimes a shadow that hid itself, but maybe just hallucinating about it. That goes to a point when I was scared of dark because I would feeling watched and no one made the link between this and what I said to my mom years ago. Times go by and I would informating myself about paranormal by watching Le Ron JD, RIP, or a lot of French Ghost Hunter or even English ones. I was 12 when my grandfather died. It affected me because he was the only one that linked my father family to my family because they sort of hate us, and his death really affected my family and me. Times go by when in 2019 I think my godfather dies. It was my everything because my godmother just ignored me by now. And when he died, this affected me a lot because I loved him so much, driving me to a sort of depression or mental breakdown. I was doing mental breakdowns really often because of school and stress I'd give to myself. All this story just to tell us what happened this year. By now, that was just being watched, but this year's it's accelerated. So this year after COVID, I've been feeling really down. Like I've been through a lot, and everything went from 1 month that goes to a voice in a corner of my room, a feeling that an energy goes to a corner on another one, and my cat looking exactly where I sense it, feeling watched always, and yesterday when my cans just fell from nowhere, and today I've tested why that could happen, and only when you move really hard my wooden shelf, or when you push the cans, they can fall. But my shelf didn't move, and my cans are accessible only by a human or a cat. My cat wasn't in my room. In short, I wanted to tell you my story of my weird house. The only rational explanations can be mental health problems. But if it was when I was young, it would have been discovered, I think. And on paranormal explanations, that can be my grandfather, my godfather, or even an unknown spirit that plays with me because I wanted to be noticed. It's only been 1 month that I moved out from my room to my older sister's room. She moved out, and that just continued again. To add context to this, my dad passed away in a freak construction accident a few years before this happened. He was tall, slim, athletic build. He always wore a certain kind of jeans, and most of his shirts were either sandy brown or grey Carhartt t-shirts. He always had a huge set of keys hanging from the loop of his belt on his left side. This set of keys easily had 40 keys on it and jingled with every step. Our house was a Lincoln log-style cabin-in-the-woods type house. You had to go up a set of stairs to get on the porch, then walk a good 10 more feet across the porch and get to the front door. Looking at the house, the stairs are on the left and the door is on the far right. The house is also built on a bit of a slope. From the top of the stairs, it's maybe 8 feet to the ground. But where the door is, if you were to fall off the balcony, it's a good 12+ foot drop. Or something you could easily jump down from and run off quickly. Sorry, this is already long, but it's important information, I promise. Now to the incident. I was chilling in the house on whatever regular day it was. The big window to the porch, between the stairs and the door, about 8 feet wide, had the blinds closed, but the bottom was raised, so I could see out of about 1.5 feet of the window, basically from someone's hip lower chest level. I was walking from the kitchen to the living room, towards the door facing the window, when I heard that jingle, the one of my dad's keys bouncing as he made his way up the steps to our house. Then I see a person walking across the porch to the door. Jeans, grey t-shirt, keys on his hip. I'm about 4 steps from the front door. I hustle to it and swing it open. Nobody. It was broad daylight. I know what I saw. There's no way someone could have gotten off the porch in the literal 2 seconds it took me to get to the door. I had came to as good as terms as I could have been at. I don't think I was hallucinating. I haven't had anything like it happen since. But I really wish that if it was him, he would have stayed a moment longer.